7 degrees C is baked in the short term, and in the long term we're looking at 6 degrees C. 6 degrees C is unsurvivable for almost every species on this planet. We have to, and what I would like to see the New Zealand government do when they go to Paris in December is I would like them to bring up the issue that the IPCC continually talks about 2C, which was an arbitrary target that was never achievable in the first place and is already way surpassed already. We're 0.85 now. There's a 10 to 20 year lag between when emissions go into the atmosphere and when the cause and effect from those emissions can be measured and seen. The catastrophic storms and weather events that we're seeing now are a result of emissions that went into the atmosphere prior to the 1980s. We haven't even seen the damage that's going to come from what we've been emitting since that time.
Yeah.
One can see from space how the human race has changed the Earth. Nearly all the available land has been cleared of forest and is now used for agriculture or urban development. The polar ice caps are shrinking and the desert areas are increasing. At night, the Earth is no longer dark, but large areas are lit up. All this is evidence that human exploitation of the planet is reaching a critical limit, but human demands and expectations are ever increasing. We cannot continue to pollute the atmosphere, poison the ocean, and exhaust the land. There isn't any more available. One of the most serious consequences of our actions is global warming, brought about by rising levels of carbon dioxide from the burning of fossil fuels. The danger is that the temperature increase might become self-sustaining, if it has not done so already. Drought and deforestation are reducing the amount of carbon dioxide recycled into the atmosphere, and the warming of the seas may trigger the release of large quantities of CO2 trapped on the ocean floor. In addition, the melting of the Arctic and Antarctic ice sheets will reduce the amount of solar energy reflected back into space, and so increase the temperature further. We don't know where the global warming would stop, but the worst case scenario is that Earth would become like its sister planet, Venus, with a temperature of 250 centigrade, and raining sulfuric acid. The human race could not survive in those conditions. As technology advances, and our society becomes more complex, we have the capacity to destroy ourselves in more and more ways. Nuclear war and climate change are obvious examples, but there will be others we haven't even thought of yet. We live in an increasingly dangerous world, and however careful we are, it is likely that disaster will strike at some time in the future.
Drought, flooding, and ocean acidification, unanticipated for 65 million years, all result from climate change, according to over 700 of your fellow scientists. So I was wondering whether you thought climate change could be an issue that could unite us all on left and right, moving us beyond debates about C16 to discussions at the UN at Katowice next month, where perhaps humanity might finally discover its global map of meaning.
No. I mean, there's a couple of reasons. I mean, the first reason is that I spent a lot of time reading I worked for a UN committee for 2 years on sustainable economic and ecological development and read a very large amount during that period of time and learned a lot, much of which made me much more optimistic than I had been before I read the relevant literature, which was a real shock to me. But the climate change issue is an absolutely catastrophic, nightmarish mess, and the idea that that will unite us that's not going to unite us. I mean, first of all, it's very difficult to separate the science from the politics, and second, even if the claims, the more radical claims, are true, we have no idea what to do about it. And so, no. And besides, it's even worse than that. Here's one of the worst things about the whole mess is, so as you project outwards with regards to your climate change projections, which are quite unreliable to begin with, and the unreliability of the measurement magnifies as you move forward in time, obviously, because the errors accumulate. And so if you go out 50 years, the error bars around the projections are already so wide that we won't be able to measure the positive or negative effects of anything we do right now. So how in the world are you going to solve a problem when you can't even measure the consequence of your actions? Like, how is that even possible?
Things are going, fine. Overall, the Amazon is fine, half of Africa is fine, so is the Arctic, Indonesia, Spain, Greece, even Greenland's on fucking fire. I mean fine. Scientists have coined a new term for this stage of climate change we're entering. We're fucked. Unlike the previous stage, which climate scientists called listen to us or we might be fucked, we're fucked is happening, and in your lifetime. This is thanks to us wasting decades piss-farting around at climate summits with non-binding emission targets, whilst handing out subsidies to climate criminals, obstructing renewables, and generally not giving a shit that rising CO2 levels are about to trigger what scientists call feedback loops. A feedback loop is the scientific term for when a species uses its own ignorance to screw itself and everything else around it so hard that its own planet tells it to git fo. Some people are already experiencing we're fucked, such as these Pacific nations facing rising sea levels, who recently begged Australia to please stop burning coal, to which Australia responded, get fucked. The combination of we're fucked and get fucked will cause wars to break out over access to food and water, except in America, where the chosen one will just nuke hunger. Would you like to know more? But please don't panic. If the realization that we're fucked troubles you, why not ride a bike to work, have shorter showers, or send thoughts and prayers? Just don't join the global climate strike this September or Extinction Rebellion in October, because a sustained collective movement would force us to take drastic action and turn this ship around, which might just be doable if enough of you demand it. Or you could go to Area 51 and demand to see the aliens, in which case we're definitely fucked.
The fact that Thatcher was talking about climate change 30 years ago and the planet is still boiling itself to death kind of proves the point that all these crusties are making. If any politician comes out and says, we know there's a problem, but this isn't the way to tackle it, the question is, what would you suggest? A strongly worded email? You actually start doing something and these people might stop supergluing themselves to shit. Yes? Saying you're aware of the crisis and then doing nothing about it makes you a pretty vile human being and a fucking useless politician. Last time, Extinction Rebellion got the government to declare a climate emergency, okay? This time they're asking what it intends to do about it. It's a pretty reasonable question. This sort of thing works. Saying you will no longer patronise the RSC if they keep taking money from big oil companies, it works, yeah? Fuck you, BP. Get out of my theatre, out of my art galleries, and out of my fucking Arctic Circle. Although I have a sneaking suspicion that that had more to do with students trying to get out of having to sit through Henry the fucking Fifth. So, here I am, to do what the media does best, whether it be the Daily Mail pointing out that it's just a bunch of crusties in need of a job and a shower, or the fucking Guardian, who have taken great pains to point out that Extinction Rebellion is too middle class and, wait for it, too white. So if the Guardian had its way, only people on job seekers allowance should get involved in climate action and everyone else should either shut up or black up. This is how the Guardian thinks the world should work. Wankers. Even though XR state you can't tackle climate change if you don't have a fair society based on equality. So anyway, like everyone else, including The Guardian, I am here to report on who is protesting rather than what they're protesting about. Not looking at the purpose of the protest, just how disruptive it is. Okay, I'll tell you what else is pretty disruptive. Mass failure of entire ecosystems and failure of entire weather systems, mass flooding, mass crop failure, mass starvation and mass human migration. Yeah, but the fucking traffic's backed up to Charing Cross. Dicks? What? What, they're all a bunch of hypocrites? Yeah, what? I'm a hypocrite? For once, Tim, I am in complete agreement with you. Seriously, I am a hypocrite. Whilst I am terrified that the world appears to be breathing its last, I also love eating steak with out-of-season vegetables flown in from South Africa wrapped in unrecyclable plastic. And I drive a car. And if Greta is right, which she is, and we only have 8.5 years to almost entirely stop global emissions before we reach a tipping point towards a global climate catastrophe, then me using eco-friendly dishwasher tablets whilst planning next year's holiday to Australia seems pretty nonsensical. So if I sound like a hypocrite, that's because I am one. But shall I tell you what you sound like when you say that they're all a bunch of hypocrites? You sound like a fucking arsehole. Okay, when you take the piss out of people protesting about loss of biodiversity a week after a report comes out saying 1/3 of all mammals in the UK are about to become extinct, who needs fucking otters anyway? When you deny science and sit there with your arms crossed, getting angry at an autistic teenager, how dare Greta tell me I ruined her childhood? You sound like a small little man. Shouting I hate you is what teenagers do. At least she hates us because we've knowingly fucked an entire planet up the arse and not because we've told her to turn that fucking racket down. You sound like a contrary, wannabe, edgy prick. Fucking arseholes trying to save the planet. They can't even hold a fucking fire hose properly. Ha 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 ha. You sound like a nasty human being. Yes, I'm a hypocrite. Well done. You've nailed it. Hypocrisy is at the very heart of the climate crisis. You will contribute to the problem. It's undeniable. You are a hypocrite if you try and do something about the climate crisis because your existence contributes to it. But if you do nothing, you are an arsehole. Pointing out the hypocrisy of the movement whilst allowing the rainforest to burn is a really shitty way to behave. For once, ignore the hypocrisy of those trying to do something and instead turn your ire towards those that do nothing. Why not point out the hypocrisy of Boris Johnson, who won't be photographed with a disposable coffee cup because it's not a good look, and who declares that the climate change is a real thing and then ridicules those people who are willing to give up their civil liberties to push for change? It's up to you, Tim. You have a choice. Are you gonna be one of the contrary little twats like Boris, or are you gonna be a decent human being and do what you can? Because I've made my choice. Okay, are we done? Are we done? Right, where's the fucking super glue? Because I'm off. I'm off to save the fucking planet. Okay, fuck it, I'm off.